Great. So thank you, Lisa. Um, so today we have Veronica Scarpellino, who happens to be a creativity coach. Raise your hand if you have ever heard of a creativity coach. Lisa has. I hadn't. And so, and so has Diana. Okay, great. Well, I had the opportunity of meeting Veronica several months ago and was able to join a masterclass that she was giving. And I'm telling you, it has been life-changing. And so I wanted to bring Veronica to Artscape to Heartscape to Convergence for you to meet her and to hear what it's all about, being a creativity coach. And she's not just a creativity coach. I will have her talk more about what exactly she does. But Veronica, welcome, welcome, welcome. So
thank you.
Can you give Convergence a group of creatives an idea of what exactly you do as a creativity coach?
Okay, that's a big question, but I'll do my best. So I am a certified executive coach through the International Coaching Federation, and I'm also a board certified coach. I do executive and leadership coaching, but underneath all of it is a focus on the idea of creative thinking and creativity that permeates everything that we do, whether it's through your work in the studio, your work that is your job, your life. That being a creative being is a very important aspect, and that it often creativity is given a very narrowly defined definition. And by broadening your definition and understanding of creative thinking and creativity, you open yourself up to applying your skill sets in quite an array to both success and excitement. So what I do with my work is through the questions that I ask my clients, the workshops that I facilitate and design, or the courses that I create, is to help the individuals or groups that I'm working with to tap into their own abilities to think creatively, to solve difficult problems, to innovate, to think more expansively, and to start to trust themselves that they can accomplish really big things and do so, like I said, with some enthusiasm and excitement. So Adriana, how did that sound? Does that sound like what you experienced when working with me?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because for me, I'm the type of person who I do a lot of different things. And so for me, wanting to connect with a master class, I wanted to be able to connect with someone or a group that would help me hone in all of the different things that I do. And so when I participated in this this group, I found it to be, I love the idea of being able to figure out how all of the different things that I am currently involved in, why, first of all, why those things meant so much to me and why I was drawn to it, but how then could I bring it together and have the accountability, and not only the accountability, but to be able to creatively bring everything together so that it made sense to me. Because sometimes as a creative, I'm doing so many different things. And so it helped me bring things together and to be effective in I would say I'm not there yet, but still producing what it is that I'm looking, that I'm not even sure exactly what it is I'm looking for, but I know I want to bring it together. So I felt that you did that. How
Yes.
did you go
Well,
ahead?
so Adrian, so there were a couple of things that we worked on. You know, there are individuals who they don't find it easy to come up with ideas. They don't find it easy to think about things creatively. And so some of the work that I do with them might be how to open themselves up to that. And then there are people, perhaps all of you, who it's not a matter of not having enough creative ideas. It's maybe too many, or which one do you focus on first? Or are there some that are doing work in the same area that can be bundled together? What's the through line between all of these? And that's some of the things that Adrian was able to work on. What's the through line? Why does this, which seems so different from this, what's the relationship between those? And how can the energy that she puts out toward it then support the other ideas that she's working on? How can it become like a synergy so that it's not being pulled in multiple directions, it's all being pushed in the same direction?
Yeah. So how did you get into that? Like, because I know that you're also an artist, but how did you get into that?
So, like probably many of you, and by the way, I love being able to talk to a group of artists because I think, you can really relate to some things that I'm saying. My identity was really tied up in the idea of being an artist for most of my life. And I was formally trained. My undergraduate degree is in studio art. And everything that I wanted to work on for a job, I wanted to have some relationship to the arts, either making it or supporting it, or in some way using the skills that I built in the work that I had studied. Over a period of time, some of what I imagined being an artist would be didn't sit well with the authenticity of who I was. And I started to bump up into some of the more like commercial realities of being an artist, and found myself uncomfortable with some of the ways that things played out in that realm, and started working with artists more on the business of art. And what does it mean to be a working artist? How do you make these things happen? How can you dedicate your whole life to doing your work, getting grants, finding galleries, exhibitions, collaborations? How do you build the identity of being an artist? And I realized that wasn't quite what I wanted to do, but I was really good at helping other people do it. And at a certain point, I started to recognize that my identity was this fragile thing of being an artist, and it was a bit of an identity crisis. So if I wasn't making and exhibiting the way that I thought I was going to be, who was I? And so I started thinking about art and creativity, not as being married as the same thing, but as an overlap. And by thinking of creativity as a way of being, as a mindset, as a way of solving problems, of helping people, to help them achieve the things that they wanted to do. The gratification and soul fillingness of that was equal to, if not greater than, when I made some art. And I realized that I found a new expression of my own creativity that was true to who I was, but also retained some of the elements that I loved about being an artist. Anyway, long story short, over time, through the many different things that I've done in my work, I've been able to help emerging artists to not reinvent the wheel. I've helped established, very longly established artists to reinvent their work on special projects, think big, and then to parlay that into, how do you do this in your business? How do you do this if you're not an artist or a creative? How do you think creatively in the work that you do? And so over time, I was able to marry my idea of wanting to help people, of coaching, and how my obsession really with creativity could become something that was a bit of a catalyst to help other people to explore and grow and achieve big ideas.
That's great. So what has surprised you about this work?
The universality of it, I think, is that that it permeates everything.
Yeah.
I'm also a trained emotional intelligence practitioner, and I felt for the longest time that there was a deep connection between your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
your creativity, and I couldn't quite get them to connect in a really cohesive way. And I've done a lot of work and research around this, and there is a significant requirement for your emotional intelligence to support your ability to think creatively. Adrian, you and I worked on this too when we talked about if you're in survival mode, you're in
Right.
fight, flight, or freeze, you can't think creatively.
Right.
So how do you get yourself into a mindset where you can use the information of that, but as information instead of paralysis, or instead of it just being this wild drive? Because for everything that we feel is information, right?
Mm.
Why do you feel anxiety? Why do you feel hope? Why do you feel fear and love? There's information there that when you develop your emotional intelligence, you can dig into that and then use that to then add the creative thinking. The combination of those two things is what I'm calling creative intelligence. Emotional intelligence plus creative thinking is creative intelligence. And that is a synergy that is quite a force. And that is where I really love to work, helping people to unpack where they are. What's the information there? This is not therapy, by the way, in any regard.
Right.
This is
Right.
all forward looking. This is all building. This is all using your innate talents to create. I mean, you have to be able to think of what if, what doesn't exist, or what are possibilities, and put that hope into it and the faith that you can figure out how to make it happen, right? And then you have to take action. There are tactics that you can apply to it. Whether you want to use some skills that you've learned in the studio and translate them to this new environment. What did you learn here? How can you apply it there? Why did you persevere? How did that inform what you might do next? I think, that's the long version of answering that, but hopefully that's
No,
helpful.
that's great. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is the test that you made us all take before, when we did your master class. Talk to us about this particular, principally yours was the test. Was that the name of it?
Okay, so there were two tests that you took. One
Yes.
was a personality assessment called Principles U.
Yes,
And
principles.
that was, it's a beautiful assessment, and it's free, by the way, if you'd like to experiment with it. But it helps you to better understand yourself, the way that you think, the way you interact with others, and the way you are in situations. And there are no right or wrong answers. Your traits are not your fates, but they're your comfort zones. They're your preferences. They don't tell you what you're capable of doing. They tell you how you best work. And this is really informative. We used this in the program that Adrienne is referring to better understand yourself, and then to collaborate with other people, because it was a partial group setting where you were with a cohort of people, right, Adrienne?
Yeah.
And then one-on-one coaching with me, but you collaborated with other people.
Sure. And what I really liked about the test, it's one thing to know yourself, but what I found revolutionary was understanding how people perceived me. That was something that really struck me, because for years I spent a lot of time trying to understand myself, who I was, who I am. But that test also brought out something, how I can relate to other people, and to know how other people view me based on the type of person, that numbers that they get. So I thought that was very, very important, because I think a
So
lot of
I think
times, go ahead.
I see one of the insights of that assessment is it gives you a glimpse into the idea that we're not all wired the same.
The same.
And maybe we've been mistaken in thinking you should treat others the way you would like to be treated,
Yes.
because we don't all like to be treated the same.
Right.
For example, some people really need a little bit more affirmation and praise in the work that they do, and others it's not such a big deal.
Right.
And so knowing how the other person that's in your sphere responds, you can act differently.
Yeah. And again, that's a useful tool in creativity and collaboration.
Mhm.
Very useful.
Artists like to work by themselves.
Right.
There's some serious power in collaborating. It doesn't have to be for the entire process, but even at certain points, having input, a sounding board, or somebody who sees things from a different perspective, or has that piece of information that you've just been searching for and didn't know you needed. We even talked about my artwork, but I do found object mixed media sculpture. And that often involves collecting objects or things that might look like trash to other people. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it until finally there's clarity on where and how, what it could be used for. And I'm the same with information. I love useless, trivial information. And I don't know that I'll ever need it, but I cannot tell you how many times I've had a conversation with somebody where I say, earlier today, I read this really weird thing, and I guess I've been saving it for you. So here's this piece of information that you needed.
Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of your artwork, let's pull up I do have a couple of pieces of your artwork.
Okay.
So hold on one second here. I'm hoping that I do have the capability of sharing. Yeah, I do. Okay. So this is Home Sweet Home. You want
Yes.
to tell us? You want to tell us about this piece?
So some of my found object work is produced mostly by nature. I have a running theme through my life of birds. My company's name is Goldfinch Leadership, which is a goldfinch is a bird, the American goldfinch. This is a bird's nest, and nestled inside is a wasp's nest. And within some of those pieces are silk threads. And I was juxtaposing different homes together to create different texture, and to have the viewers question and respond to what home might be.
Okay. This is Model Home.
And it's funny that these two pieces both have home in the title. They don't always relate to home. This piece I actually love, and it's one of the last pieces that I did when I still had this self-identity as an artist. And now that I've expanded my definition, I'm a creative. So, and under the guise of an artist, these found objects are, the base is a machine mold from an old factory here in Philadelphia. They made looms. So this wooden piece is beautiful, just a relic, but it had a functionality to it. All of the pieces of the birdhouse are found copper pieces from a jewelry studio. And I took these and put them together to represent a birdhouse. My first job out of college was building architectural scale models. So I called back some of the skills that I had then. Roofs are hard, by the way, all of those angles, even if it's just one peak. So this is a copper birdhouse, all found objects.
Neat. Okay, that's all I have for your artwork. But talk to us about what you're hoping. What does the future look like? What are your plans in terms of Goldfinch? What are you looking to do? How are you looking to expand? Some of your upcoming goals?
So I've been thinking a lot about what creative thinking and creativity means to me, and knowing how the ripple effects of creativity can have such a positive impact in bringing people together, creating empathy, communication, community, self-expression. And I was kind of floating around the idea that I knew that the work that I was doing could have an impact. And I settled on this sort of ethos for my company, which is that creative thinking can change people, and
Yeah.
creative people can change the world. And it's my hope that by helping individuals or teams or companies to think more creatively, that they can have a more positive impact on the world. It's remarkable what you can accomplish when you start playing in the realm of creative thinking that's not siloed in one location of your life. When you can start tapping into it for how you load the dishwasher, how you get to and from the store, how you communicate with other people. When you can apply different tactics that you know from your studio to a really sticky problem that you're facing, whether that's in your business or at home, that it's remarkable what you can come up with to get out of the mode of thinking that you've been stuck in, to break free of it and to think about things from a new perspective. It's really amazing what can happen.
Veronica, could you give us an example of that?
Sure. So, artists, I would like you to create a piece of art. You can take as much time as you need, any medium you want, as big as you like, any theme, and whatever you want to put into it. There are no limits. Is that overwhelming? Is that a bit daunting? Okay, so the tactic is false limits, false constraints, false restrictions. Artists, you're going to create a 12 by 12 two-dimensional piece using only colors of red and gray. And the theme has to do with the season, or the liminal phase of fall turning into winter. Could you now generate lots and lots of ideas around what you could possibly put into this? Oh, also you have 4 hours. Okay, so what can you do in 4 hours with that? Now, those were false limits. We just put restrictions, constraints on something that didn't exist. And you can do that in your work, in your life. You can say, there is no deadline for this, but I'm going to give myself 1 week. Whatever I come up with in 1 week is going to be what I move with. I'm also going to only consider 3 key factors. So all the array of things that might be important for this, I'm going to only pick 3 of them that are the most important, and all the other ones are going to be set aside. Okay. And so by creating false limits, you can actually create the environment where your creative thinking really starts firing on all cylinders. So that's just one example. You can do that in reverse, where you have too many restrictions, and you can start kicking those out. What if I didn't have a budget? What if I could, I didn't have to worry about money? What kind of ideas would I come up with if money were no object? Chances are most of the ideas you come up with are going to still be out of your range, but if you put your budget back, how many of those ideas might still fit within your budget? So limits are a really great tool. We added some to create the environment for more generative creative thinking, and in the other way, we eliminated some.
Awesome. This is great. This is great. All right, it's 5:32. I really want to stay true to our time. I want to know if anyone has any questions for Veronica. I want to leave some ample time to have conversation, because I think this is rich. Is there anyone who has a question or a statement, somebody? Cornelia, there you go.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Cornelia.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear what you're saying and to know about your resource, because as a artist, I've been really struggling with what is my purpose, and have resolved that and understand that creative thinking and artistic approaches to life are the missing piece to so much in our society. And like, just even coming across research where you know, a 12-week practice of drawing can actually change the white cells in your brain, and that how the brain changes through creative activity like drawing or painting or something applies to other areas of your brain. It reminds me of what you just said, you know, taking some of the creative principles and applying it to the dishwasher. So what I'm struggling with is, why is this knowledge, why is it so hard for this medicine to be part of our everyday world? Why are schools not making sure that kids get plenty of time for creativity in their day? You know, doing art projects or creative games or stuff like that. Like, they're talking about empathy and kids' ADHD and how I can't help but their brains are just not functioning, because we've got creative brains, and if we don't use them, do you have any insight on that, of why there's such resistance? Or
Well, we live in a world where business and money drives things. And we also had a misguided approach to public education in the country that focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. There has been a push to make it into STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Right.
But I think that pendulum is swinging a little bit in the other direction, especially with the rapid development of AI. That there's a significant recognition that what's going to set us apart and allow us to work as humans is what makes us human.
Right.
And empathy, working in the humanity, and creativity, teamwork, those are all going to be crucial skills. And I've been watching education conversations that have been, especially in early childhood, they're really amping up the more dynamic learning environments. So that's a very hopeful thing. The World Economic Forum, that surveys employers all around the world, has been tracking what the most important skills of the future are for years now. And about 10 years ago, creativity broke the top 10, which was really wonderful. Their newest list had come out, and creativity is now considered the number 2 skill, only behind analytical thinking. And so it is the most rapidly rising skill required by, you know, in the minds of business owners, you know, the CEOs and the corporations, that creativity is a highly desired skill set. So that also is really hopeful. Is that at all helpful for helping you?
yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's being recognized. But then you don't have to answer this, but the shadow question came as you were talking. It's like, what use are artists? Just artists. You know, what use are we? if everybody gets creative. So,
Oh.
but anyway, that just went through my mind. But
Not everybody wants to be an artist. And because creativity can be applied in so many ways, the engineer who can think creatively can solve problems in their capacity,
Right.
the way their brain works, the way they like to be.
Right.
The scientist can think creatively to take new tools and to cure diseases and to come up with new ways of healing the environment, right? So creativity can be applied in all of these different areas, and not everybody's going to want to be an artist. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of fear that AI is going to take over the art world. It's the true studies into it are indicating, and we're a long way from that, the capacity of AI is more like on the child level. And it's really, it doesn't come up with anything new and novel, which are important for innovation and creativity, new and novel. But humans are very good at that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Cornelia. Who's next?
Rita, did you have your hand up? Oh, you were just putting your hand in front of you. Well, I will follow up on that. I'd love to have an in-depth conversation about AI, but all of these things wrap together, like, try to make it short. We often bump up against this intersection within arts, church conversation about, sometimes people will say everyone's artistic or everyone's creative. And I think what's behind that is really positive and meant to be encouraging. But on the flip side is that sometimes that can undercut the reality of basically what you do, Veronica, which is teach people tools to develop their creativity. Like, I believe everyone has the capacity for creativity and everyone operates at varying levels. But I think, to your point about AI and it being at a child level, I think oftentimes there are environments in some churches where that's perfectly satisfactory. And so to me, I think there is value in this elevating what creativity can offer, the way that you are talking about it, and encouraging people to step into that like, this is a muscle that you can use in all of your life. And like you said, is so important for solving the problems of our daily lives or the future. And we shouldn't be satisfied with childlike creativity. Thus, I think also elevating artists who put so much time and energy into developing that specifically. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about the flow state. Have you all experienced flow? Where you are using your mastery to the point where you've lost track of time. You don't feel cold, you're not hungry. And in some ways it feels like it's just flowing through you. You're just a vessel. And the environment the best environment to generate a flow state requires a level of mastery. You can't get into flow if you don't have a certain level of mastery with your function. Whether you're a writer, a singer, an artist, a mathematician, whatever your medium is, if you don't have a level of mastery within your medium, then you cannot really slip into flow. So I don't know if that has any bearing on what you're talking about, but that's what I was thinking.
Very good. Any other questions?
I hope I'm not on the camera, but I'll talk anyway. I don't want to be seen on the recording. But I think about flow. I just got out of a writing class like right before church started, and we're doing short stories, and I've been doing writing prompts since 6th grade. And this one person in the class was thanking, because it's a multi-generational class, she was thanking one of the other writers who's, I think he's around 80 and he's still writing, and how he just was in flow. Like he was just talking about how this story poured out of him, and he read it to us. And I thought about how many times how many words he has written at this point to get to that mastery level of saying what needs to be said. Because even I sometimes hold back, and I'm half a century old, but thanks for the reminder about that. But more importantly, thank you for helping me to remember this idea of creativity being a mindset and a way of life, a way of being, and not about product, right? Because that's how I started out as a kid. I was just, wanting to be creative, from dancing to singing and all of that. And I think for me personally, what makes the difference between a creative person and an artist is intentionality. Like, you're intending to produce art to be shared with the world, or whether it's for pay or not. I think, just like I preach all the time, but I don't consider myself a person on the preaching circuit. Like, I'll preach if you ask me, but I look at my colleagues who I went to school with, and they're intentional about preaching. They're intentional about seeking out opportunities to become a master preacher. Whereas I'm intentional about seeking out opportunities to write and share my writing. So that's me, but I could be wrong. But like, Cornelia can tell me how to draw all day long, and I can draw, or whatever. Cornelia, I know she's not limited in one thing, but I would never be at that level because I don't have the intentionality of doing it. And I appreciate Cornelia existing and giving me opportunity to be in her world for as long as I can be. But I'm still a literary artist, right? But I'm glad that someone has mastered it, and I get to be creative as a visual person. But I'm a writer. Yeah, I don't know if any of that made sense, but Veronica has really just want to thank you again. You just lifted a burden off of me.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
of
What a
feeling
compliment.
like, okay, if I'm not, I don't have to produce art all the time to be of value as an artist, right? Yeah, that's, even when I'm baking, I love to bake. Even when I like change an ingredient, even though baking is a science, but when I kind of say, okay, if I add in this and do, that's creativity. And that's why I love baking so much, because I can have a base and make things my own. So thank you for that reminder.
And so you can dare to recognize something doesn't exist and move forward in such a way to bring it into existence.
Nice. Nice. Susan.
So I was so grateful for your presentation, and I feel like it really sparked something in me when you said that art is not so much what you're creating, but it's a mindset. And I started thinking about, I go to New York a lot, and I was just thinking, what if yesterday when I was on the subway doors had closed and we all were there and there was an emergency? How would we all respond? And I started thinking of the artists and the fact that what we do requires so much persistence. It requires, in my case, I'm a singer, so I'll sing 3 measures 5 times before I move on to the next measure if I'm having trouble with it. And I accept that there's a peace in that. There's a settled feeling in my body as I'm looking at a knotty problem and I'm figuring slowly a way to get through it. that I feel like if I'm the person in the subway, I don't panic as much as the next because I'm used to things that seem difficult or beyond me. And I know methodically how to get through them. And I do it most days. So I have like a storehouse where I can have that calm or that settledness. And so I wonder, how can we teach our kids? Because persistence also is a quality that they say kids who are able to find school less frightening and find it something where they feel they can succeed or they're seen, persistence is the thing. If they give up when they can't do something, that is when you get
Right.
into trouble. So I wonder, how can an artist teach persistence? How can we be a presence that way? And I like what you said about mindset. It's one thing that comes to me. Thanks.
I have so many thoughts, but I'll try to keep it concise. Artists are naturals at experimentation, at trying something that they don't have any proof that it'll work. And when it doesn't work, they're not let down by it. They're like, I've just learned something, new information. They're prototyping it. And there is an iteration factor, right? A series, if you will, that you learn from over time. And inherent in that, I think, is a lack of judgment on your part of the work being a failure. Because that's just part of the process. And what is your creative process? Being able to articulate that is really helpful in not only understanding where you are, through the arc of a work, but also being able to communicate to somebody else and say, it might look like I'm just sitting here daydreaming, but a lot of hard work is happening right now.
Yep.
I'm building things up and tearing them down. I'm experimenting. Oh, that failed because of that. And before you even put pen to paper, you've already built it and torn it down a dozen times.
Yep.
Right? So there's a level of non-judgment involved in that process. Children, very young children, are free to draw the craziest things out of their imagination. And then slowly they start to recognize other people are not understanding it or judging it. And they start to shut that down. They stop asking questions because they're taught that it's not productive for the flow of the class if you keep asking questions, or because they're starting to learn how their world works. And so these new things that were surprising are no longer surprising, and they stop questioning them. Artists are also really good at questioning and saying, well, just because everybody says this is like this, I'm going to turn it on its head and say, what if we did it this way? Sometimes that involves reinventing the wheel, and you've expended a lot of energy for no real payoff. But sometimes that ends up giving you ideas and new information that is the innovative spark you needed. So, as you're thinking about kids, how can they recognize that a failure is not the end? That there's feedback in failure. There's information in failure. My son, he's 5, a bit of a perfectionist, and we got him this book called The Beautiful Oops. So how do you take an accident and make that into the next big thing, which couldn't have existed had the accident not happened in the first place? And it was like night and day. Suddenly he, from freaking out that he put the dot in the wrong place, and now he's like, this is going to be a beautiful oops. And he gets excited about it, and it's really beautiful. So I think the lack of judgment, the ability to ask deep questions, and this feeling of that there's feedback and failure are key elements of being an artist that are innate to the work that you do. But sometimes I think we forget about it out of the studio, that's also can be part of the process out of the studio. Does that get into what you were?
Thank you.
Very good. I guess we would have time for one more question, if there is one.
I've got something to add, but I want to give someone who hasn't had a chance.
Okay, I see that there are two, Joanna and Steve. So Cornelia, if I could I'll go to Joanna first, because if Steve has a question, he can ask me later. Just
No,
kidding.
no, no,
Just
no,
kidding.
no, I
Just
would've-
kidding.
I would have
Go
if
ahead,
no one
Joanna.
else. Yeah, I would have if no one else was stepping up, but it's
No,
fine.
no, no.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joanna.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I have a question that's been on my mind for a while. Finally, I have someone to ask. Yeah, and I write and I draw. I have not mastered both. I don't struggle with doing both, but I do struggle with my time, right? And I sometimes I think maybe one day if I draw good enough, I wouldn't need words. Would that be the time I don't need to write? However, if I don't write, I kind of lose the tool to organize my thoughts. Kind of, so having both kind of calm my heart. Yes, yeah. So if I don't write well, I also don't draw well. So it's not, yeah. So I just, right, I don't know. I would like to have some advice on how to move forward, or more practical ways to, I don't know, to build a discipline or something. Yeah, thank you. If you can answer shortly, then two other people can be benefited.
Well, I wouldn't dare to give you
Yeah.
advice.
Okay.
But I do have a couple of questions that you can reflect on.
Okay.
You know, the purpose of your writing and the purpose of your drawing. Are you able to think of, you know, how malleable that purpose could be? And day to day, does it have to be the same? So does journaling give you the same writing oomph that you need as sitting down and writing a poem, for example?
Not enough.
I-
Yeah.
And the other is, did you say time?
Yeah, time management. Yeah.
You know, what could using false limits on time do for you? What if you set timers or blocked time on your calendar where for an hour you did, you know, one type of activity and the next you did another? That could be something that could be helpful for you. Or how can you play with time that works for you? Because that might work for me, but it doesn't mean it would work for you.
Okay.
So, you know, when you think about time, what questions can you ask yourself about time to kind of dig it up a little bit and flex your interpretation of it, your application of it? So these are some things that you know, that came to mind, but I wouldn't dare to give you advice.
Okay. Thank you so much. That helped. Made me think. I'll spend some time to think. Thank you.
Okay, and Steve?
Yeah, first, thank you, Veronica, for your, unique way of empowering artists, which is a valuable area because it's an underexplored area, I think. I'm sort of recovering over the last decade or so from a rigid, structured lifestyle where I never saw myself as a creative person. In the last 10 years, I could see that has flipped around because I've been on a ministry track and there's been a lot of chronological freedom and other freedoms that have allowed this flourishing of creativity to begin to emerge. So to hear you say to put some artificial constraints, that was giving me permission to put those things on myself because I was so much avoiding them because I associated them with a past period of rigidity that sort of contained me and any notion of being creative. So I don't know, you're giving me permission. Was that hard for you to do at first?
Yes. I'm a rule follower.
Uh-huh.
And breaking rules can be uncomfortable, but as an artist, you also inherently need to break some rules. But you know, what, you know, again, with, as I did with Joanna, I would say, if you were to think back on when the work that you did, even in the rigid environment, what were the circumstances or the features of it when you were most productive? What existed in those times when you felt most at ease or even fell into flow in the work that you were doing? And can you reproduce some of those in your existing world? Because you know they work for you. Could they work in this new environment? And you might need to play around with them, jigger them a bit to figure out how they might flex in this different environment. But you know, what worked for you before that you could borrow from?
You know, I could tell you what didn't work. You know, when you go to a, like, say, a church discipleship class, and there's maybe a, you know, type A type personality who's giving you a sort of a Monday, you know, from 7 a.m. to 7:45, you read, you know, that never worked for me. I was never able to get into this flow state that you're describing. For me, it's like longer tracks of unscripted and sometimes unplanned times, like 3-4 hours where I'm daydreaming and out in nature, and then or lost in my computer and not distracted and beginning to write. That's the area of my creativity at this point. So yeah, I think I'll have to maybe keep that part of what worked in the past, but put some goals on top of it, right? And I'll experiment with artificial constraints. And then also you mentioned artificial liberties. I'll mess around with that one too. Thank you.
You know, and so this person was segmenting time into these little tiny slices. And what I'm hearing from you is that you're having bigger chunks of time.
Yeah.
And so that pace and that chunking of time is more effective and freeing for you.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, don't feel compelled to chop it up into little bits if big works for you. But maybe that's how your definition of time is getting stretched and pulled.
Thank you.
You know, I will work with my clients and say, what time of day do you feel most energized? What time of day do you feel most drained? Is there a day of the week that you feel best and worst, or season even? And how can you be intentional about what you do during those pockets of time? If you have a downtime, your body naturally dips around 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, what can you plan? How can you plan your day so that you can take advantage of that?
Wow. This was great. It's 6 o'clock, and you know, we always want to stay true to our timing here. And Lisa, thank you so much for putting Veronica. Oh, and Veronica, you put your
I saw Lisa doing. I was like, oh, that's my
yes,
signal.
yes. So here are some links here for you if you want to connect. Lisa, I'm going to turn it back over to you because I think you have some news or whatever.
Yeah, you know what? I forgot my little slideshow at the beginning, so I'm just going to pull that up while we
Okay.
I can find it.